When the human race began centuries ago, maybe thousands of years ago, when we began to investigate, when we began to look at nature, and little by little understand that there's meaning there that we hadn't seen before. It's not as if our eyes looked at something different. It's not as if when science and philosophy and understanding began, it's not as if there was some new nature that we were looking at that we'd never seen before. No, it was the same thing that we'd always seen day after day for thousands of years. And yet one day we began to look at it a little bit differently. We began to understand that inside it there's some meaning that we had never noticed before. But that meaning was always there. It was there all along. And so it is with our faith. We begin to understand our souls more deeply. And we should, every day. We begin to understand our faith more deeply. We begin to understand our church more deeply. And what we understand has been there all along. We just haven't noticed it. And that's what makes it so exciting to be a human being. That's what makes it so interesting to be a Christian. Because there's always more opening up. And the same scriptures that we've read and heard millions of times, in those same words, there's depth and beauty that we never imagined. Until maybe not the 999th time, maybe not even the 1000th time, maybe 1001, that's when something new is going to click that we've never seen, that first 1,000 times that we've seen it, that we've read it. We've been to church so many times. We've seen this curtain open hundreds of times. And all along, it's meant so many things. We've seen incense every Sunday Mass. Maybe we've never even asked the question, oh, what is this? It smells good, it's nice. But what does it mean? We see the candles. We see the altar. We see the way the priest is moving back and forth. I challenge you. Ask questions. Because you'll be amazed how much there is, how much beauty and how much meaning there is, especially in our Chaldean liturgy. Now, one thing happens that we're celebrating today, that we celebrated really on Thursday, the Ascension. And without the Ascension, a lot of our faith doesn't make sense. A lot of our liturgy wouldn't make sense without the Ascension. The resurrection is the great feast. But it's not the end of the story. The Gospels don't end there. Not even Mark's Gospel. Mark's Gospel, he's in a hurry to say what he has to say. And even Mark, no, he knows. The story goes all the way to the Ascension. Yes, Jesus rose from the dead, but for 40 days he was appearing among the disciples. But then on the 40th day, he ascended into heaven. We even use different words. We say rose to describe his rising from the dead. We use ascension to ascend, to go up to heaven. So what does that mean? That must mean something. It must mean so many things that Christ went up into heaven. Well, the readings that our church gives us, the readings that we have today, are very interesting. They point to something very beautiful. Isaiah. I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up. Sitting upon a throne. What does Mark say? He was taken up into heaven and sat down at the right hand of God. Jesus is on a throne in heaven. He's a king and his kingdom is there, and yet he's ruling here. Look what happens. He ascends into heaven, and yet he's in charge of everything on this earth. The disciples can go in and heal the sick and cast out demons. And the Lord works in them. So what does it mean that the Lord ascended to heaven? It doesn't mean that He's not with us anymore. It doesn't mean that we're alone now. He's still working in us. Okay, fine. He saw the Lord. Isaiah saw the Lord sitting on a throne, and His train filled the temple. And the angels called one to another and said, Holy, holy. Where have we heard that before? Where have we heard that 1,000 times? Right here at Mass. So our church is pointing us. It's pointing our eyes to say what happens at the Ascension is a liturgical thing. This has to do with our worship of God. Because now Jesus is in heaven. And the angels that Isaiah saw are worshiping a man like us. And they're saying holy and bowing down before one of our race. And so when we say with the angels, we really mean it. And when we sing holy, we know that the angels in heaven are singing with us. To the same Lord, to the same Christ. Wow. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of Him who called. They were ringing bells. The temple, the house, was filled with smoke. We're evoking this imagery, this heavenly imagery. When we burn incense, we're making ourselves think of heaven, where Jesus is seated on His throne. Because that's where we are when we're at Mass. We're transported liturgically, mystically. We're worshiping with the angels in heaven, that Messiah that went there. What else is there? Burning coal and an altar. All that's there in Isaiah. Now, our liturgy makes many connections. Connects this burning coal that was touched to the lips of Isaiah to the Eucharist. The burning coal was touched to his lips and his sins were forgiven. The Qurbana, which is the fire of God's presence among us, is touched to our lips, is given to us. And our sins are forgiven. But mostly, what we remember today is Jesus going up into heaven, ripping through the heavens, ripping through the barrier between heaven and earth. And in the letter to the Hebrews, we know what that means. And we understand it better than anybody else, better than any other church, because we show it. When the curtain opens and the dividing line between heaven and earth is broken, and Christ is in heaven, and we remember that, and we know that, and He's not just in heaven by Himself. He's in heaven and He's interceding for us. What does it mean that Jesus ascended? It means that we have someone on our side in front of God. We have someone taking care of us, strengthening us in our work. It means we're not alone. It means we have a Messiah who's watching over us till today, till now. It means that one of us, one of our race, has finished. He's finished the race. He's finished the struggle. That means there's hope for us as well. That means all of the things that we struggle with in our life have an end, have a conclusion, have a finish line. But it means, for us, most of all, it means that we were built for greatness. We were built for heaven. And nothing that this earth can offer will ever satisfy us. will ever really make us happy. And we know that because Christ is there. And He is our destiny. He is our hope. He's our finish line. That's a great compliment that God is telling us. We were built for something so great, so much greater than anything that we could ever see here. And so, we take encouragement, and we open our eyes little by little, and we realize and understand all the beauty that's there, God's nature and in our faith and in our church, but also in ourselves. And there's so much hope, and there's so much greatness, and there's just an unlimited potential. We were meant for heaven. And so, we worship God who is there, we worship Christ who is there, and we act that way.